Good morning. I'm Guy Gronwald with Gronwald Fern and Wool Company, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the fact that we've suspended and now canceled the rest of our routes for the United States. We did it for a few reasons. One, we actually were nearly full as far as our storage capacity goes. We couldn't ship fur out to China, basically, and as a result, we had storage issues. And as the season progressed, quantities started increasing, and we just couldn't get it out the other end. And then the other more obvious reason is the coronavirus fears of spread and whatever. So we thought maybe we would suspend the routes and then maybe make some later pickups this season as the virus died down and it became a little easier to get stuff into China. But although it may be getting a little bit easier to get stuff into China now, the fears of a possible shutdown as far as our production here goes, processing green skins is still somewhat of an issue. So we've canceled the rest of the routes for this season. We would love to possibly reschedule those routes, or at least an abbreviated form to service all the trappers sometime before next season. It becomes increasingly difficult as we don't have refrigerated trucks to do it over the summer. So there is a lot of people have been calling asking about storage solutions for their fur, and what they would do until we'd be able to run something in the fall or something to service trappers when the virus dies down, and hopefully some of these storage and transportation issues are corrected for us. I'm going to kind of go down the list of all the items in storage, but I'm going to point out basically two items. Well, first of all, I'll point out no items, and then I'm going to talk about carcass fur. Basically, animals cannot be stored in the carcass. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous for one thing. It's too big of an item to put in most freezers. So, but it's an animal that it'll dry out, or whatever the animal species is, it's going to dry out. And it's going to be very difficult to skin when we try to skin it. So we don't accept, we won't be accepting carcass animals in the fall that have been stored, because we may be running a route before the season. It'll be very apparent that and that it's it's from the previous season, and we won't be accepting those. We won't be accepting those at any time next year. In a lot of areas we go, we don't even accept carcass animals anyway. So I don't suggest storing anything in the carcass. The second thing is green, or just skinned and not fleshed and dried. And I'm going to point out two species that we would suggest that you could store in the grease, and that would be beavers and otters. Beavers, if you listen to our previous videos, we told you you fold them one time on the backbone, or if you have to for storage purposes, two times. With the skin side in, you should have no trouble in a good freezer holding those over until fall or winter next year. Otters, essentially the same thing, very thick-hided animal, and as long as you don't have any flesh exposed, we'll try to give you a full price when we do purchase that animal next year. A lot of people catch an otter later in the year anyway, and sometimes we buy those in the fall. We don't discount those. The rest of the items, everything from red fox to coyotes to muskrats to wild mink, pine marten, none of those items, bobcat, I would suggest store in the grease. Raccoon would be an item that has, maybe raccoon and coyote are a fairly thick-hided animal that you can have decent success with if you freeze it in the grease, but you end up with, for the most part, you're going to get some freezer burning, and that makes it very difficult to dress. The water won't soak into the hide, so we pretty much won't be buying those two items if you freeze those over in the grease. Now, as far as the items in stretching and drying them, basically every item is storable. Some items store very well. You stretch and dry your muskrats and pack them very tightly and put them in a freezer you can barely, if it's a good freezer, you can barely tell the difference the next year. And all of these items, muskrats, red fox, coyote, just right on down the list. Oh, raccoon, of course, if you stretch that animal and dry it, and we suggest packing it as tight as possible. Most freezers today are a lot of freezers that are sold are frost free. What that means is that freezer basically a little bit thaws out on a schedule automatically, and to get rid of that frost. And what that does is a lot of times whatever's in that freezer actually thaws out just a little bit, and that's why those edges get so freezer burnt, because it's a constant freeze thaw process. And if you pack those animals really tightly, none of that stuff is going to have that freeze thaw cycle. So you can alleviate that problem. An item that even stretched and dried, wild mink is a very poor item to even in the if it's stretched and dried to hold over. I mean, we will buy it next year, but that's probably the least favorite item that's stored in a freezer from one season to the next. But all of your other items, obviously the otter and the beaver, if they store well in a freezer in the grease, they're obviously going to store pretty well in a freezer if they're stretched and dried. Those two items are the best storage items, but all of these items, barring the wild mink, stretched and dried, you should have pretty good success just packing them tightly and compressing them as much as you can and putting them in your freezer. And compressing them also helps with your space. So anyway, I think that should cover just about everything. Have a great summer. Sorry about the cancellation of the routes. We'll still be at this time. We're still running in Canada because it's mostly coyotes and it's all stretched and dried up there. We don't buy the grease, so it's not quite a big deal. And the areas where we buy is pretty much virus free yet. But we'll be in contact with you on that as well. So anyway, if you have any other questions, you can certainly put them on Facebook to us or email us or whatever. But hopefully the situation gets straightened out by next fall, and we can run our regular set of routes. All right, thank you.